Hey everybody, welcome to YouTube's Scale Modeling channel. This evening we're going to do part 2 of our multi-part series on building and detailing the Revell Monogram 148 scale B-24D, and we'll focus on detailing the landing gear and making some changes to the machine guns to make them more accurate. So with that said, let's get started. The detail work that I wanted to add to the wings and the engines is now complete, and it came out pretty good. It's really hard to form fit parts like this on the inside of an enclosed area, but it came out pretty good. Of course, the Edward parts didn't fit together very well, so after this is primed, I'm probably going to have to fill some of the areas on the edges in here and here with some white glue. But the engines look really good, and of course you can kind of move them around a little bit, which was nice. So yeah, and of course you want both sides of the detail that you add to be duplicative. This one is a little off here. It's not exactly in line on this side, but it's passable. Once it's painted and add a little weathering, it'll look pretty good. So, not bad. And of course, the engines look really good. So, the wings are done, and I've also completed the work on the landing gear. I cleaned them up, and they fit together fairly well. And I haven't taken the silver paint off the tires yet, but the Edward hydraulic lines for the brakes, they fit together, surprisingly fit in on here really well. And then once it's all painted, I can use a detail brush to paint those black. So yeah, they look good. And tires fit inside the hubs fairly tightly. Get you a little bit of a close-up here. This is how I did it. Yeah, the only problem with the photo etch hydraulic lines is they're flat. So when you add paint to it, it adds a little bit of depth to it, but you got to be really careful how you do it. So it came out pretty good. And here's the front landing gear, and how I did this is I set it with some Testors red tube glue, and once that dried, then I hit it right around the edge here and on the underside with some super glue applied with that thin wire applicator to make it nice and strong. So came out pretty good. I do need to fill that right there. I didn't do that. I forgot to do that punch out. That's a mold release punch out right there. So I can use my water and punch kit, create a disc, super glue it in there, and just sand it smooth, and that'll solve that problem. So just to go over what I did, I modified the engine nacelles to accept the resin 2 detail 3D printed engines, and that came out good. I drilled out the exhaust ports, and again, the way these engines are designed, the exhaust fumes that come out this way, they turn the air compressor, which pushes air back into the engine. It's rather ingenious. And of course I added some detail here. There's some more framing that goes here to here and here, just in here and in here, and I didn't add it, but I got enough framing in here that it adds a level of detail to it, makes it look good. And when you install this, it'll look really nice. So once it's all painted up, And I'm going to do desert sand color on the top and the light gray on the bottom. And it'll look good. I'm really pleased with the way it came out. So that concludes all the work that I'm going to do on the engines and the landing gear. And we are ready to move on to some more detail work on other parts of the aircraft. I've got the horizontal stabilizer and the rudders glued up internally, and they came out pretty good. It fits pretty good on these. So how I did it was I used slow set super glue, put some in a puddle on this piece of paper, and then using this thin wire applicator, dab both the positioning pins and sporadically put some around the inner edge, probably about 1/8 of an inch in so that it wouldn't squeeze out, and then put the two halves together on all three of these, and then tape them nice and tight. So they look pretty good. So now it's time that I'll take the tape off and go ahead and put a bead, a tiny bead of medium set. See, in areas like that, you're going to have to do that. That's where the tree attachment point was. And a bead all the way around, and then carefully sand the super glue down a little bit, and then go ahead and scrape it flat, and then shape it with a flexifile, and we're done. On the horizontal stabilizer / elevators, same technique, and nice tight fit. So I don't know how they fit together yet. I'll find out as soon as I take the tape off, and we'll see how it looks. I'm almost done with the aft control surfaces, and I used my same technique. I put a tiny bead of super glue all along the seam lines here and over here, and did the same thing on the rudders all the way around. And then for the curved surfaces, I used the flexifile and just carefully sanded down the super glue, and came out pretty good. And then I used silver paint to check everything, and looks good. Now on the trailing edge where it's nice and sharp, you can just use a sanding stick, this is my handy sanding stick. This has lasted me a long time. And the same thing here. I used the flexifile all the way around here, and it came out pretty good. And the other thing I did was the way these go together, of course, is like this. And there's a pin on one of these to make sure that you glue the correct rudder on the horizontal stabilizer. But the other thing I did was I cut off a little bit of the end here so that I have a little bit of wiggle room to go back and forth, just a little bit, probably about a 32nd of an inch, and you can see that. And that helps align this edge here with this edge here. And these are really tight, and the fit is pretty good, surprisingly, on a Monogram kit. On the B-25, Monogram B-25, I had to do some work, but this one fits really well. And I think once I get it glued up, and I'll use tester's glue here so that I can position it, I think I can prime these areas, and just a bead of white glue all the way around will seal that tiny opening right there on both sides. Now, let me get it in here, right there. That's nice and tight. And this one, same thing. It's nice and tight. And again, a little bit of wiggle room. You can see it wiggling just a little bit, about a 32nd of an inch, and that's all you need to get that edge lined up with that edge. So that worked really, really well. And this, again, this one is nice and tight too. So, and I'm able to preserve all of the beautiful surface detail that Monogram incorporated into the horizontal stabilizer as well as the rudders. Just these tips, and it's not a problem. You're not really going to see it. So even they did a nice job even on the fabric surfaces here. So what I need to do is take a Q-tip and some thinner and go ahead and pull off all the silver paint, and then I can go ahead and smooth this out, and then hit it with some very fine steel wool to smooth out the plastic, and all three of these parts are done. So we're in good shape. I've got the Masters 2-part barrels installed on all the guns, and they came out pretty good. Now on some of these, I use my standard technique of cutting off the kit barrel, drilling it out, and then inserting the 2-part barrel in its place. And then I use some Elmer's glue to help set it, and then once I get it the way I want it, then I'll hit the tip right there with some medium set super glue. So you got to make sure they're straight this way and that way. So this one came out good too. This is the rear turret, and I'll put on both of these, instead of painting these, I'm going to use the pre-painted machine gun belts from Edwards here. That'll dress this up nicely. On the single 50 cals for the gunner's positions and the rear fuselage, same thing, drilled out, cut the barrels, drilled them out, and put the 2-part Masters barrels in. And I added these gun sights. And these came from Model Technologies, which you can still find these on eBay. They've been out of business for, I don't know, 25 years. But they had some good stuff. And so I have a bunch of these, and I'll continue to use them till I run out, and then I'll see what's on the eBay and get some new ones. The other thing is that the feeder belts for the 50 cals, I use 0.15 by 0.1, and they fit inside of these feeder belts from Mini World Hobbies very well. See that? Slides right in there. And you don't need to paint these. These were natural metal. And this one will go on the port side, and this one will go on the starboard side. And the feeder belts will attach to the ammunition boxes that are on the sides of the fuselage. Now, these are the 50 caliber guns, and they're noticeably smaller than the 50 caliber guns that are for the rear part of the fuselage. I don't know why Monogram did that, but they did it. And I used a different technique. I did not cut off the kit supplied gun here. Instead, what I did was I scraped it down very carefully by rotating it on this block. So I used a sharp number 11 X-Acto blade, laid it flat, and just carefully rotated and scraped it until I got it to the point where, see that? See how thin that barrel is? That barrel is about 0.040 inches, because that's how big the diameter is here, and it slides right on here. So this took, about 5 minutes to get it down to where it needs to be. And it's a lot easier than cutting off the barrel and then re-drilling a hole and working to position it in the center. And I really like the way it came out. So I think that's what I'll do. Unfortunately, I couldn't do it on this one because this part had been loose inside the box and both barrel tips were broken off, and one of the barrels was broken off on this one, so I had no choice. but I hit on this just to see if it would work, and it did. I was really pleased with it. So all I have to do now is just put a little bit of super glue right on that tip to hold it in place, and it'll be real strong. So I really like that. Again, these are these Kit World feeder belts. Now, Edward gives you feeder belts, but you got to bend them into shape. These come pre-bent. All you got to do is use them, and I really, really like them. And it comes with a little instruction thing here. These guys from Ukraine, it's hard to believe they're at war, but I got to tell you, their stuff is really, really good. And this really enhanced my B-17 model, so I'm using them again. So those are the changes that I made to all the 50 caliber machine guns, and now I'm ready to airbrush them a gunmetal color, an enamel gunmetal color, or a lacquer gunmetal color, and they'll be ready. Hey everybody, I hope you enjoyed part 2 of our multi-part series on building and detailing the Revell Monogram 1/48 scale B-24D. So, when you get the chance, subscribe to our channel. Be sure to give us a big thumbs up. And if you get the chance, visit our website at www.mikeashley.com. And most importantly, happy scale modeling, world.